We've already seen that prompting a large language model can take you quite far. But there's a technique called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, that can significantly expand what you can get an LLM to do by giving it additional knowledge beyond what it may have learned from data on the internet or other open sources. Let's take a look. If you were to ask a general purpose chat system, such as one of the ones on the internet, a question like, is there parking for employees? It might answer something like, I need more specific information about your workplace, because it doesn't know what is the parking policy for your company. But RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, we'll see, is a technique that can give the LLM additional information so that if you ask it if there's parking, it can refer to policies specific to your company. How does it work? RAG has 3 steps. Step 1 is, given a question, is there parking for employees? It'll first look through a collection of documents that may have the answer. For example, if your company has different documents on the benefits offered to employees and the leave policy, and some documents on the facilities, and some documents on payroll processes, then the first step in the RAG system would be to have the computer find out which, if any, of these documents is most relevant to this question. And parking seems like a question about the facilities, about the building that your team works in, and so hopefully you'll select out the facilities document as most relevant. The second step is then to incorporate the retrieved document or the retrieved text into an updated prompt. So let me construct a prompt as follows. I'm going to say, use the following pieces of context to answer the question at the end, and then I'm going to take the relevant text from my facilities documentation with the parking policy that all employees may park on levels 1 and 2 and so on, and put that into my prompt. So this is now a pretty long prompt because it tries to give a lot of context for the LLM. Now remember, last week we had spoken about limitations to the prompt length or the input length for a large language model. That's why in practice, rather than dumping an entire very long document into the prompt, you might pull out just the part of the document that's most relevant to the question and put just that into the prompt. And then finally, we add the original question, is there parking for employees? So this is called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, because we're going to generate an answer to this, but we're going to augment how we generate text by retrieving the relevant context or the relevant information and augmenting the prompt with that additional text. Having constructed this prompt, the final step is to then prompt the LLM with this rich prompt, and hopefully the LLM will then give us a thoughtful answer, telling us about where we can park. In some applications using RAG, in the output shown to the user, we would also add a link to the original source document that led to this answer being generated. So in this case, we might link to that facilities documentation so the user can, if they wish, go back and read the original source document and double check the answer for themselves. RAG, retrieval augmented generation, is an important technique that is enabling many LLMs to have context or to have information beyond what it may have learned on the open internet. Here are some examples of RAG-based applications. There are many companies today that are offering software that let you chat with a PDF file. For example, if you are reading a white paper, but you maybe don't have time to read the entire thing carefully, but have a question that you want answered based on that white paper, there are many applications today, like PandaChat, AskYourPDF, ChatPDF, and many, many others that let you upload your PDF file and then ask questions, and they will use RAG to try to generate answers for you. I find that some of these software packages work better and some work worse, so the results you get may vary. But there's certainly been a lot of excitement and interest about building applications to let you chat with your PDF files. There are also more and more RAG applications that will answer questions based on a website's articles. For example, Coursera Coach does multiple things, but one of the things it does is use RAG to try to answer questions based on content on the Coursera site itself. Snapchat also has a chatbot that uses text from Snap to try to answer different questions you might have about their products. And HubSpot, which is a marketing automation company, is another example of a company that has a chatbot that lets you pose questions and tries to generate answers for you based on content from the company or from the website itself. So these types of chats are becoming an alternative way to let users get answers to questions that they may have about your company's offerings. RAG is also leading to new forms of web search. Microsoft Bing has a chat capability. Google has a generative AI feature as well that can generate text in response to your queries. And startupu.com, which was actually started by one of my former PhD students, Richard Socher, is a web search engine that was built centered on a chat-like interface. So RAG is used in many applications today, and excitingly, it seems to be transforming even web search. To wrap up this video, there's one big idea I'd like to share with you, which is to think of the LLM not as a knowledge store, but instead as a reasoning engine. LLMs may have read a lot of text on the internet, and so it's tempting to think of them as knowing a lot of things, and they kind of do, but they don't know everything. With the RAG approach, we provide relevant context in the prompt itself, and we ask the LLM to read that piece of text and then to process it to get to the answer. In other words, rather than counting on it to have memorized enough facts to get us the answer, we're instead using it as a reasoning engine to process information and not as a source of information. And I find that this way of thinking about LLMs as a reasoning engine rather than as a way to store and retrieve information can expand the set of applications that we might brainstorm and consider an LLM to be capable of doing. Admittedly, LLM technology is early and it doesn't always do that well, but if an LLM isn't just a database that stores a lot of information for you, but it can process and reason through information, I think that is an exciting direction to think about where LLMs might go from here. Even though I've talked mostly about RAG in the context of building software applications, this idea can also be useful if you're using a web user interface. Sometimes I would take a piece of text and just copy it into the prompts of an online web UI of an LLM and then tell it to use that context to generate an answer for me, and that too can be an application of RAG. I've found that RAG is useful for many different applications, and I hope that you will too. In the next video, we'll talk about another technique called fine-tuning, which is another way to expand what an LLM can do. But before I wrap up, let me just say, I hope you enjoyed this video on RAG and that you can really clean up with this RAG stuff. I'll see you in the next video.